And it's like a 4.5 hour drive. And it's really hard to describe sometimes to my friends who are extroverts the excitement I feel about being in a little cocoon 4.5 hours on my own.
Power to Live More with Joe Dodds.
Welcome to the Power to Live More podcast, all about productivity, organisation, well-being, energy and resilience. I'm Jo Dodds, and I started this show to enable interesting people to share their stories about how they use their power to live more, and by that I mean to do the stuff that they want to do more than the stuff that they need to or should do. It's about creating a life for yourself where you have the energy, health and space to be happy and fulfilled, spending your time as you'd like, whether that be at work, home or somewhere else entirely. That's your choice.
Hello, my name is Ellie Dodds and I am co-presenter, and today Joe is interviewing Rob Husband. Rob was introduced to us by Steve Jones from show number 123. Joe said Rob really reminded her of Steve, so it was a bit spooky. Rob is the founding director of a small coaching company, Space to Think Limited. He's been working with people in development roles for the last 25 years. His work has ranged from supporting rough sleepers and young homeless to managers and leaders in the voluntary, public, education and private sector. He has more recently trained as a therapist and is increasingly interested in working with the human insider role. He spent his time between one-to-one coaching and therapy, tutoring on counselling and coaching courses, cycling and walking, and when possible, wild swimming. Back to the studio.
Today I'm interviewing Rob Husband of Space to Think. Thank you for joining me, Rob. Really great to have you with me.
Okay, thanks so much. Looking forward to it.
And you were referred by a mutual friend of ours, Steve, who's been on a show with me already. And already, as he predicted, I've enjoyed our pre-conversation. So really looking forward to this. So really pleased to be talking to you. So start by telling us a bit about who you are, what you do and where you do it.
Okay, so who am I? That's a big question. So I am probably a number of things. So my name's Rob Husband, and I'm a director of a small company called Space to Think, and we primarily we do a lot of facilitation work, and we do a lot of work around coaching. We are really interested in working with people and organisations who want to have an impact for good in their local communities. So we do quite a lot of work with voluntary sector organisations, do quite a lot of work in education as well, and small businesses. And we have done a little bit of corporate, and we've realised that probably there's a little bit of too much of a mismatch of values. So that's a bit about what sort of work-wise. I'm also a therapist, so I run some training courses for people looking to become therapists, and run my own practice. I set up my own practice. And down in Devon, where I've just moved to. So I'm based in Tavistock. Just moved down from Oxfordshire. And I am, what else am I? That's my business bit. I'm passionate about, I've said I'm passionate about people. I like people. I'm quite a strong introvert though, so I don't like spending too much time with people, but I am really intrigued and fascinated by people and how we interact and live together, and sometimes really well and sometimes maybe a bit dysfunctionally. So I'm sort of always really interested in that, and I'm a great lover of nature. So hence I'll move down to Dartmoor. I just feel like I'm alive when I'm outside, and too much time in front of screens and inside, I feel a bit of me starts to wither and die. And I'm also a musician. That's about it really. So I think that captures me a little bit.
Lovely. I was going to say musician, always music to my ears. It's a bit of too much of a pun, isn't it? What do you play? What do you do?
I play guitar. Guitar is my main instrument. Acoustic guitar, do a bit of piano, and write. And I don't perform much now. In my younger years, that was probably a career choice at some point. I was really heavily involved in music and sort of music tech. So set up a recording studio when I was about 20 with a friend of mine that he still runs. So I have a lot of friends who are musicians, and I'm probably now more supporting my own kids. I've got a daughter who's becoming a great singer, so I tend to go and play guitar for her when she gigs at the moment. So yeah, so it goes in fits and starts. I need to perform once or twice a year. If I don't, I feel like a bit of me is missing. So that's I couldn't do without the music, but I feel like I made a choice a long time ago that I wasn't going to invest all my life to that.
Yes, yeah. And it's interesting what you said about being sort of quite introverted but interested in people. I do think sometimes that people with that sort of outlook make really good facilitators because of that sort of tendency to observe rather than always be in the midst of it, sort of thing.
Yeah, it's a weird balance. It's a weird experience actually, because so even when you sort of facilitating and coaching, that I'm aware that I'm in the public arena, and people are wanting something from me, and which is okay, but I find that can be really tiring. But I don't feel like I necessarily need to give my opinion to them. I'm quite happy with my own thoughts about life. Do you know what I mean? So that probably helps, but it can be quite tiring.
Yes.
Having a day with with a group and having to be out there in the external world. It can be really tiring. But it's a weird balance. I have a co-director called Andy, who's a really dear friend. We've worked together probably for, I don't know, near on 20 years in various relationships. And he thinks I'm a raving extrovert, and he is so introvert that he thinks I'm a raving extrovert, which is really makes me laugh. Because I feel like I'm quite introvert, and that's the feedback I get. But I think I can become quite playful in a group setting sometimes, which I think probably leads to the extrovert bit coming out to becoming a little bit more prominent.
Yes, it's interesting. People think that I'm extrovert because I talk a lot, but I spend a lot of time on my own, getting my energy from being on my own and not speaking to people. And also, I don't know if you've ever done the Gallup Strengths Finder, but one of my a couple of my strengths are around communication and winning others over. So I always sort of think to myself, it's interesting that being more introverted from an energy point of view, but actually being somebody whose personality has to make people feel, involved and whatever in public situations, means that I look very extrovert when actually, as you say, afterwards it's quite draining, but I can't not do it. It's interesting how many facets there are to our personalities, just so complicated, I suppose.
It's really funny. I'm really sort of into sort of environmental stuff. So driving cars, I was sort of a bit guilty driving, but having made the transition from Oxford to Devon, at the moment that's been a really recent move, and I've had to drive down, like to bring down the trailer of all our camping stuff and all that sort of stuff, and it's like a 4.5 hour drive, and it's really hard to describe sometimes to my friends who are extroverts the excitement I feel about being in a little cocoon 4.5 hours on my own. And it's like, what a wonderful experience. I couldn't think of anything better.
Yeah, I absolutely get that.
And it's really funny. And sometimes I will listen to the radio, and sometimes I'm just like, for the next hour, I am just going to think about this. And then after that, I'm going to think about this for another hour. And it's just like a real, I love it.
Well, again, I'm really noisy and extroverted. When I was about 7, we had a downstairs toilet in our 3-bedroom terraced house, and when I used to go to the toilet, too much information, I used to imagine that the room was actually my room, and instead of a toilet there was an armchair, and I'd have like shelves of books, and it would just be my room, and nobody else would be able to come in, and I could just go in there.
So
Well,
I now look back and think I had these tendencies, these more introverted tendencies, all that time ago.
Yeah, we're looking at we're going to have an attempt at building our own house down here, and
Wow.
one of the important things is we do need something in the garden, like where it's not just me. I've got 3 kids, and 2 of them are really clear that they love their own time, and their own space. So they're saying, we need somewhere where we can go on our own and be away from everyone else in the family and stuff. And then 2 other family members are reasonably extrovert, so they don't sometimes understand it. It's really funny.
Yeah.
We a few years ago we did a bit of a train trip with the kids. So all 5 of us went off and we did what's it called? Interrail. Because my wife had done it when we were younger, and we thought, oh, we're going to go and take the kids. So we went for a month and just travelled by train. And I can remember talking about it around the dinner table about 2 months afterwards, and my son not saying much about how he felt about the trip, and he just said, "I know how I feel about it. Why do you need to know?" And it was like.
Articulated that as well. Actually, understood that he wasn't going to tell you, didn't need to tell you, and needed you to know that.
Yeah, no, it's great.
Brilliant. You've been in business quite a long time. You've had a business partner, and things have changed a bit recently. You're involved in other things other than your business as well. Tell us about why you do what you do.
Oh. Okay, I'll tell you what. There's probably a pivotal moment that I think something clicked for me. I was about 24, and I was working. I was running a music shop in Bristol, so like a retail, selling guitars and all that sort of recording equipment and stuff. Mm-hmm. And I used to hitch quite a lot, and I used to love getting into a car with a complete stranger and just asking lots of questions and having a great conversation. And finding out lots about each other, and you would never meet them again. And I used to really love that. And I can remember standing at Gordano Services hitching, thinking, do you know what I'd really like to do with my life? I'd like to spend my life just travelling around the country, having conversations with people. And that's what I do, I think.
Yeah.
And I think, why do I do it? I don't think I can't not do it. I think that's the part. That's why I do it, because I can't not do it. If I'm in any situation I'm in, I will ask questions, and I'll talk to people, and it's who I am, is the reason I do it, I think. So yes, I've never had a career path or anything like that. Do you know what I mean? I just feel like that.
Yeah.
I enjoy listening and asking questions and whatever. And I'm just fortunate enough to be able to make a living doing what I do, really.
I love that you can sort of see that direct line between that moment and now. How did you get from there to here? Because, as you say, you're doing what you wanted to do, and you're lucky to do that. It's not just about luck, is it? It's about what you do on the way. So how have you sort of crafted what you do to suit what you want to do?
Okay, so let's have a look. I'm trying to think where to start.
I only ask big questions.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So that's cool. So I long story, sort of probably a bit of I think yuppies were still the language that we used at that time. Do you know what I mean? I was fortunate to have a bit of money, reasonably well paid job, and actually was really good at squandering it all. And suddenly realised that that's probably not what I've got myself into a bit of a mess, really, in my own life. And I think at that moment, I started to notice other things around me other than me. So I started to notice primarily rough sleepers, actually, when we were in Bristol, people sleeping rough. And I just started to just have conversations with them. And then I'd moved down to the southwest, and I started going out on my own in the evenings, just taking out food and cups of coffee, and got to know quite a lot of people who were living in squats or were sleeping rough, and just started out talking and having conversations. And then I got asked, I did some voluntary work for an organisation and some paid work doing similar sort of work. And doing that, I feel like I learned probably about listening properly and asking good questions, because if you didn't, you got punched. And so it's quite a steep learning curve. And then I was employed then by an organisation to work with young homeless young people, and I suppose I developed just some listening skills and some participation skills about how do you get people involved, how do you help people grow, and I just experimented, and then started to get asked to, can you come and do some work with not just young people, can you come and do some work with our staff in our organisation who also work with young people, to help them think about how they can develop young people. And so that just started to happen, and set up some projects in prisons, and did some training with prison officers who are working with young offenders. And it just grew. And then more and more got asked to do work with senior managers and leaders of these organisations. And then I'd always thought that I wanted to go and do something on my own. And I'd set up space to think, probably 20 years ago, just as a sole trader in the background, sometimes had part-time roles, and I would do a bit of my own facilitation stuff. And then I got made redundant from a job, and just knew at that instant this was the time that I needed to go and just do my own thing. And so just took a risk, really, and made that choice to go and do that. And initially on my own, and then with a couple of other people. Yeah. So I think I've become unemployable, because part of I suppose I've always been really interested in how do you live a life, not just how do you work, how do you live a life well. And so for me, I find it really difficult at times to put a boundary between what's work and what's not. Do you know what I mean? So this is what I do in life, and some of it I'm paid for and some I'm not, and that's okay. But none of them are more important, and I'm just trying to keep getting that balance right. So yeah, that's and I've forgotten the question. How do I get? So that, I suppose I at times have made deliberate choices that I am, and part of it about risk actually, because running your own thing is risky. You're never sure about the income and all that sort of stuff, and so I think I've made a choice that I'm going to do that, and try and not worry too much about what the outcome might be. We've got away with it for however many years, and I don't anticipate that to change really.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think there's sort of two camps, if you like, for people working for themselves. There's the people who the work is everything and it's all consuming, and they're growing it, and it's going to, they're going to take over the world, or get employees in and build a business or whatever. And then what you've just described, which is sort of where I am with it, and people who want that flexibility probably have made themselves unemployable, as you say. I think I would agree on in the same boat. People who say yes to things, not really knowing where it's going to take them, but feeling that they want to do that, and somehow you sort of fit it all together and make it work for you. And that's some of what my sort of Power to Live More ethos is all about. So tell us a bit about how your days run and the sorts of things that you're involved in.
Okay. Okay. I had a big change recently. So just moved from Oxfordshire down to Devon, and at the moment I'm on a Sunday evening I'm travelling back up to Oxfordshire, and I do 2 quite intense days. So on a Monday I run in the morning. I'm doing like a a blended learning, virtual learning coaching qualification for a couple of hours with a small group. And then I run 2 different counselling skills and counselling theory courses during the rest of Monday. So that's like quite an intense day. And then the next day I'm usually in Oxford doing coaching of head teachers and senior leaders in education.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then the aim is that I come back and I do some work on the train. I get back Tuesday night, and then I cycle and I walk and I do some thinking, and I'm trying to create more and more time to made a decision a couple of years ago. I mean, you actually, it's really interesting because you were asking earlier about almost like or I don't know if you asked the question, but there was something underneath the question about, the deliberateness of choices, or how did you get to where you are and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I think I'm a really strong believer in the whole when we bring intention to something. So this time last year, I made a decision that I wanted to deliberately get involved in some social activism. I think I've always been on the edges of it in terms of how I work. But if I want to do something really deliberate, so within about 2 weeks, I'd found a course that I was going to go on around social activism. I went to a conference around environmental stuff, and then went to Extinction Rebellion's first declaration of the climate emergency stuff last November in London. So all that happened in about 2 weeks. It was just a really intense 2 weeks. Training course and this conference and then the Extinction Rebellion. And then so I felt like I'd had some intention about I want to do this stuff, and then all of a sudden that probably took over my life for about 9 months. And now I'm in the process of how can I make that sustainable for myself. I need to make a living. I'm fortunate enough to make a living doing what I enjoy. But I also want to have enough energy to be able to do this social activism, make a difference to a bigger system approach in a way that is probably thought through and is sustainable for me. So I'm just trying, and I think I'm still trying to work that out. I think I got close to knackering myself.
Yes.
Just emotionally, and so. So like one day I would be, and this was, some of the stuff, I would be at the weekend, I'd be in London, I'd be sort of helping facilitate and plan, social action event outside of the House of Parliament, being filmed by the police, really intense stuff. And then the next day I'd be running a group of therapists, for starting therapists. And moving from one to the other is so hard work. And just really realizing that now, after 9 months of nearly burning myself out, I have to find a different way of doing that. I think I'm still in the midst of trying to work that out, because I want to be able to do that stuff really well. Yeah.
It's interesting. 2 things. Sustaining stuff, I think, is is one of my 5 fundamentals, because it's not easy to do all this stuff intensely, but it just flows and it happens, doesn't it? It's, as you say, how you can keep doing it whilst keeping that energy and whilst, not losing everything. I was at a meeting yesterday. I volunteer with Engage for Success, all around employee engagement, and because I do a lot of the website stuff and things behind the scenes, I was sort of frustrated and saying, everything leads to me. When we decide we're going to do something, it normally creates some sort of content that's got to go on the website, and then I have to do it, and I've got a to-do list the length of my arm, and it's, and I can feel myself being overwhelmed, thinking, I need to rethink how this sort of works, because that's not the right attitude to have. Anything we do is going to create me more work. So that's interesting. I think the second one, what you said, the bit about changing between the two, again, connected to success. I did a podcast interview on Monday with an internal communicator, and she was saying that she likened that role to a thing called, I think it's called chess boxing or boxing chess boxing, I think it's called, which I've never heard of. Have you heard of it?
No.
Apparently sport apparently, where they box. They get in a ring and box, and then after however many minutes, the whistle goes and they have to play chess. And then the whistle goes and they have to go boxing again, and they keep doing that until basically one of them is left somehow. But the reason she shared, it's bizarre, isn't it? It's like lots of that. But the reason she shared it was she was saying that her role was very much about the switching between the two, from being really strategic to being really tactical, and that was the challenge. Yeah. And you've just said the same, but in a different scenario, that the changes between your Extinction Rebellion type social work and your actual sort of earning work, it's changing that's energy depleting, and so there you go. You've got a new way to describe it to people, that it's like chess boxing. I quite
like that idea, actually, because there is something about. I mean. So how do you make the transition when you're in sort of different roles? How do you do that?
I think it's probably about a bit of down in the middle. I have really random structures to my day, i.e. there's generally no structure, and I suppose that is part of it. It's that a bit like you were saying about being in the car and not speaking to anyone, or I don't know, going out in the countryside or whatever. It's just allowing those moments of transition, rather than, I think if I did like the miracle morning, and I don't really do mornings, which doesn't help, but if I did something like that, it would almost be like I'd throw off one sort of mantle or whatever the expression is. I'd get in from being the volunteer, and then I'd have to go into this process, this whole routine I'd set up for myself, which would be exhausting as well, and then move into whatever else I was going to do. And actually, I don't do that. I pick and choose the things to do that then feel right in the moment, I suppose.
That's it's really that's interesting, because I find that part of me really enjoys the energy that is created by sometimes the juxtaposition between different roles, and then other times I think I do enjoy it, but I am aware that it costs energy wise. So, for example, I do a little bit of work for a thing called OSS Retail, who have been running leadership programs for leaders in retail. They've been doing them for about 80 years, and they've got a new program that I write the program. I design the program for them, and it's really weird because it's at the heart of retail. So they'll have people from Harrods, people from Whole Foods, John Lewis, and then loads of independents. It's like a real eclectic mix. And then, so I will be having meetings with them about their program, and I'm quite open about who I am and what my beliefs are. So I will, I'm quite open about the fact that I don't fully agree or sit comfortably with the model of capitalism that we work with and we live within. And retail is part of that, so I have some uncomfortableness about this, and I'm really open about it. So I will have a meeting with them, and then I will end up talking about Extinction Rebellion, and then I'll go off and I'll be in London on the streets the next day. And that feels really exciting, because I'm able to have some influence there. So I've said, I'm going to do this leadership program this next year for them, but I will only do it if you allow me to start bringing in stuff around climate emergency, because we can't not talk about it. We can't not talk about it anymore. And actually retail has to respond. So it's like a really weird, I enjoy the juxtaposition or the potential conflict of those two roles. It brings some energy, but it's also knackering.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just, so I enjoy it, but it's tiring.
And you've also created now even more of a home environment where you've got that opportunity to, get that energy back, I guess. You said before we started that, you're going on a bike ride later. You've talked about, the countryside and all that sort of stuff. Is that part of the reason for the move? Is that?
Yeah, no, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I said a number of reasons. One is that part of trying to create some more space to do things that are not paid means that we have to live differently. We have to live a bit simpler. and part of that means we're going to attempt at building a small, simple house. Do you know what I mean? We're going to move away from having a mortgage, and so that it frees. And that's not about so we've got more money. It's actually that we need less money. Therefore, we don't have to make choices based on is that going to bring any money in? No, actually, it doesn't matter. The right thing to do. So we've had to, and it's painful. We've got 3 kids, so they're coming on the journey with us, and that's all fun and games. They don't seem all up for it, April.
Have you told them that's why you brought the tent down with you?
Yeah, no. Well, I think actually 2 of them probably would be quite happy to live like that in any case.
Yeah.
So that's one of them. We said that we probably can't afford to build a big house, so you'll probably have a pod in the garden. That's moved now to actually they're not interested in the house. They're interested in I am going to have my pod in the garden, aren't I? So
just build 4 or 5 pods. It'll be fine. You can just all meet in a campfire in the middle.
We haven't. Yeah, no, we've had lots of conversations that aren't far away from that.
Oh, brilliant! Well, I look forward to hearing more as it progresses.
Yeah.
Sort of practical in terms of getting stuff done. Bearing in mind what a varied working week you have, how do you make sure you get done what you need to get done? What tools are you using? Are you into technology or not?
Yeah, I am. I think I'm aware that technology works well for me. I'm also aware that if I rely on it too much, it doesn't work for me. So I think so. I'm getting much better at being able to allocate my time. So the weird thing is I have not chaotic, but I have quite a flexible, changing life. Do you know what I mean? So most days are very different. And but what I am really good is taking opportunities to say, actually, here I need to plan to do this bit of work, and this is when I'm going to do it. So, for example, if I'm on a train, I will diarise my time when I'm on the train. That I am going to do these things. I'm going to take opportunity to write that up through this, and that, I think I've learned to do that better over the year. By nature, I'm a procrastinator. I'll leave things, and I've learned that actually doesn't always bring me the outcome that I want. So I have got much better at being quite strict with how I diarise my time. So that allows me to have other times that I don't need to diarise at all. And I've learned to be a quick worker. I can just get on with things, and I have to. I do things like, and I haven't quite worked this out yet in where we live, but when we used to live in Banbury, I would go into town for the day. But I used to have an office at home, so I was like, right, I'm going to do this task, and I'm going to do it in the office for 2 hours, and then I'm going to walk to this cafe in town. And as I'm walking, I'm going to be thinking about this next bit of work that I've got to write about or do. And then I'll complete that when I get to that cafe. And then I'll move on to another cafe to do something else. So there's something about sort of delineating space that works really well.
Yes.
And when me and Andy worked as co-directors, we would do that. We would spend a day together, and we would walk and talk and stop at various places and write stuff up, and then go and talk about something else as we were walking to another place. So for me, there's something about being active while I work is really important. I think that's how I do it.
So you mentioned that you're not working with Andy now. How's that changing how you work? Because given you've got quite a sort of varied working week, I can imagine it would have been quite hard to work with somebody, but then once you've worked with somebody for so long, it must be quite difficult to work on your own again. How does that play out?
I sat down 3 days ago and wrote a letter to Andy, who he resigned as a director on the 31st of October. And I wrote a letter to him about how I felt about not working not necessarily just about not working together anymore, but about just how I view our, especially the last 10 years, where he was a co-director of working together. And I sat there and I had tears running down my cheeks as I was writing the letter. Do you know what I mean? It's like we have a really deep relationship and feel really privileged. I know lots of people who have, had partnerships or gone into business with people, and it hasn't worked out the way they expected, and do you know what I mean? And it got a bit painful, it got difficult, or one of them left because it didn't work, and all this sort of stuff. Me and Andy have had a really open, honest relationship where even when it's tough and things are a bit difficult, we've always been really open and caring of each other. So that's what I will lose, because I feel like we were accountable to each other, not just about our work, but how we lived. So we would have conversations about, I hear you saying you want more time with your family. How does that fit in with the fact that in your diary you're away for 3 nights next week? Do you know what I mean? And I think that's the bit I'm probably, I hope that I'm able to keep somehow within me from working with someone for so long, is that stuff that he brought, and his ability to slow down and look at quality and stuff, as opposed to my always wanting, what's new. Do you know what I mean? I hope that I can bring that stuff. So it feels a bit better now. About a couple of weeks ago, it started to feel really isolating. Yeah. I feel like I'm on my own now. And so we're doing some co-facilitation together, so which will be good. But it does feel different, and I think we're still trying to work out how that's going to be.
Yes, yeah.
It does feel weird.
Where people, I can't remember who it's come from, but that thing where, what would so and so say? It's somehow being able to conjure that up so that you keep saying, what would Andy say? Sort of thing, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I quite often hear him on my shoulder.
Yes, yeah. And so lovely to hear that you've, worked together for so long, and, it's changing, but it's not changing in a negative way. It's just a change of growth and moving forward sort of thing.
Yeah, no, I think I feel really. I think there's something about, especially when you do sort of facilitation stuff and coaching work and stuff around people. For me, it's always been really important to try and role model, healthy relationships where you can have challenge and conflict, but you can also have, real affection and all those things. And I think if I look back, I'm really proud that I think that's what me and Andy did. And we did it publicly because we worked together lots. We co-facilitated loads. So I feel really proud about that. More probably than the actual, the work that we did. I think I feel prouder about the way that we did it together.
Yes. Yeah.
So that feels really, but it does feel weird. It does feel odd.
Yes. Yeah. Oh. So just moving into the last couple of questions. Firstly, what about on those days where it all goes horribly wrong, when you have a seemingly bad day? How do you deal with that?
I think it's going to sound. I'm really cautious about this question because so I have a supervisor for my work, and a few weeks ago, probably about 2 months ago, when loads of transition was going on, with our house sale fell through 3 times and all that sort of stuff, and it all got a bit tense and wasn't sure what was happening with the company at that point. And I'd said, but fortunately, it hasn't started disturbing my sleep yet, because I can tend to sleep whatever's going on. And then from about the next 3 months on, I don't think I had one good night's sleep. So I'm really cautious about the question about what do you do when you have a bad day, because part of me wants to say, I think I'm getting better at not labelling days as good or bad.
Yeah.
But I'm really concerned by saying that I'm also going to have probably the most horrific days I've ever had over the next week or so. So I'm a little bit cautious about naming that. So what do I do? I get out, I walk, I cycle, talk with yeah. I've been sort of I try and I'm not a great meditator, but I have been involved in stuff around contemplative sort of traditions over the years. So I try and build that in.
Yeah.
So I go to the Quakers, and I think I have a number of things that if life is challenging or work is challenging, and there is stuff that could create anxiety, I think I have a number of things that I know I need to do to look after myself. You know, that will be spending some time in silence. It will be, spending time with some friends. It will be going for a walk. It will be going for a cycle. And the number of things I know not to do as well at the same time. So I think that's the bit that I'm probably more interested in about is in developing, as opposed to what do I do when I have a good or a bad day. How do I make sure that these things that are helpful are always accessible to me?
Happen more often. Yeah. No, I agree. Okay, and what about those days when you get to live more, and that's where you get to do more of the things you want to do, and less of the things that you feel you should do or you have to do? What do those days look like for you?
They look. This is going to sound a bit glib. I do spend a lot of my life pinching myself, thinking I am so fortunate and so grateful.
Yeah.
The majority of days I can look at and think that was an okay day. I was doing things that I wanted to do, and I was with people that I wanted to be with. And I'm aware that comes from a place of real, I have some privilege around that, and there's some and some of that is because that's what I've decided to do. Do you know what I mean? There's a real mixture. Yeah.
Absolutely. I don't think it's glib, and I was fully I was fully expecting to hear you say what you said, and it is about what you've said already about intention. And it's interesting, people who talk about intention will quite often give that sort of answer to that question, because that's the point, isn't it? You get clear about what you want, and then somehow you make it happen, whatever that might look like. And I think that's that.
And I think the making it happen is really strange, because I don't probably sit down and plan things in a methodical way, but I do tend to have a strong sense of direction, of where are we headed towards. You come across Charles Handy?
Yes.
I went to see a couple of seminars he did a couple of years ago, and he was talking about the 2-year curve. So organisations tend to have they have this curve of growth when they're really young and creative, and then they get to this bit, and then they probably start to stagnate a bit, and then start to die a bit, and that's a normal life of an organisation. Yeah, and that's great. And then he was saying that the dilemma. So he says talking about the trick that is actually to start to recognise when you are starting to reach that bit, the top bit at the top of the curve, before you get there, and start to decide what is it you want to be doing in 2 years' time, because it will probably take 2 years to bring some change. And my wife went to one of his seminars, and we were saying, we look back at our life and we realised that's what had happened. Life would be good, no problems, in terms of where we were living, what we were doing, but thinking, we know that we get a sense of change is coming, and we think it's going to be about in 2 years' time. What does that start to look like, and how do we get there? And we've just done that again. So it was 2 years ago we decided to move to Dartmoor. Do you know what I mean? And there's just something about that intention, without getting into, well, we're going to do this on that date and that on that date. No, that's where we're moving towards, and we're trusting that will happen.
Yeah. I was just something the other day about goal setting, and how everyone goes on about it all the time, and it's not something I do with great. I don't even do it really. I think about where I want to go, intention and direction, but I don't actually, do the detail bit. And they were saying, which I've I've heard before that if you, do the goal setting and especially if you tell people about it, that quite often you don't do whatever you say you're going to do, because by saying it, you almost sort of tick it off in your head psychologically that you've done it.
Yeah.
And I think that's interesting that, having that sort of general intention for something, towards something is not done. It's just a direction, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's like, that's really interesting listening to you talk about that thing about the goal thing, about when you state that goal to other people and something happens. Yeah, I think that's really interesting, because I think sometimes I've experienced by verbalizing something as a goal, actually all of a sudden I then become accountable to those people I've said it to in some way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, there's something in there that I'm sort of intrigued by.
Yeah, and that's sort of popular thinking, is that that's what you should do. You should create that accountability by telling other people. But the thing I heard the other day, I'd heard before in that context, which is if you've told somebody, then you've sort of, like you say, I'm going to run the marathon, you get so much kudos about the fact that you're going to run the marathon that actually you probably don't even need to run it, because you've had all of that beforehand. But as I say, that what I heard this week was not in terms of telling other people, it was even just telling yourself.
Yeah.
You again tick it off in your head that psychologically you've achieved it, sort of thing, which I thought was really interesting and something to ponder. But there you go.
Yeah,
so
I get that.
It's been so interesting interviewing you today, Rob. I really appreciate the time that you've taken. Tell people how they can find out more about you and get in contact.
Okay, so we've got a website, so www.space2think, that's a number 2 in the middle, so space2think.org is probably the best place. I do a little bit on Facebook, not too much. I'm probably best having conversations on the phone or Skype or something. So am I okay to put out a phone number?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so my mobile number is 075 000 46521, or an email would be rob.husband@spacetothink.org. And that'd be the easiest way to get hold of me.
Lovely. Thank you.
All this information is available in the show notes. If you go to powertolivemore.com / in this case 142, then you'll find them there. This week, I just want to share a little observation about life with you. I've actually, I've been lucky enough to spend a week in Spain with my cousin. When I tell you about some of the things that went on, it may not seem so lucky. So my cousin is stewarding a campsite for the Camping and Caravanning Club in Spain, just sort of about an hour and a half north of Valencia. And I went over thinking I'd get sort of a cheap flight and it would be quite an easy sort of scenario on the basis that I'd be staying in her camper van with her, and it's quite cheap over there and everything else. And then I ended up having to change what I was doing because she changed campsites at the last minute. So my flight that was local originally ended up being one where I had to get a hire car and everything else. And then the day that I flew was the day that they had a fire at Alicante Airport. So I ended up being redirected to Murcia, which I only knew literally as I was boarding the plane. So then I was frantically phoning Holiday Extras, who I used to book all the extras for my holidays, so to get them to contact the car hire company that I now needed in order to get to the campsite, because I was at a different airport anyway, to tell them I'd be delayed and I didn't know by how much. And so I had to wait in Murcia to get a coach up to Alicante Airport, by which time they had opened it. So then I was able to get my car and then drive up to the campsite. So basically I set off at 6 o'clock in the morning from Kent and ended up at the campsite at 9 o'clock at night. So that was an interesting start. And then if you have been listening to the weather forecasts in Europe, you might remember that this last week, which is the third week in January 2020, Storm Gloria hit Spain, and it was right where I was. So let's just picture this. I'm staying in a camper van on a campsite right next to the beach, where the whole road by the beach is completely
cut off because the road between us and the local town is completely flooded. It's like a lake, and all the coast road is completely covered in stones and debris and stuff from the sea and whatever else. And they clear it one day, and then the same thing happens again the next day. So it was all like not very good, and you can imagine it was quite noisy and rocky in the camper van. And then we had issues with my cousin's awning, because awnings and wind don't really go together. And then we went out for the day finally when the weather wasn't so bad, a couple of days later, and it took us a particular way to get out because there was only literally one way to leave the site because of the flooding and the problem with the road. And we ended up having to drive through a ford, which was quite rushy water. So that was a bit sort of let's let another car go first and we'll follow them. And then when we came back, the sat-nav, the Google Maps, was actually directing us firstly either by the coastal road, which clearly was shut, or by Alcosibra, which is the town next to the campsite, which we couldn't get from to the campsite because of the flooding. So we ended up driving around in the middle of nowhere for seemingly hours. It was probably an hour in the end, but down little, it was a bit like being in the desert, or a bit like, I was trying to think, I can't even think of the place near me, down on the Romney Marsh, where the nuclear place is. Oh, what's it called? I should know. I live just up the road from it. But anyway, like it's like being on the moon. It's like little gravelly tracks with like potholes and mud, and there's like the occasional house, but there's no lights. There doesn't seem to be any inhabitation. It's pitch black, and we're driving around trying to find a route that doesn't involve either of those two places I've just told you about, or what turned out to be this massive like new river that had just basically started overnight. So lots of the little roads led to dead ends because there was like a lake in front of us. And weirdly, the day that I left, so that was yesterday, I ended up going back out the same way that we went out, the other day, where we'd had to drive through the sort of river, the ford, and actually it was completely dry. So literally 24 hours later, it was completely dry. So it just shows how the sort of environment there is quite interesting, quite different. Dungeness, that was the word I was looking for, where the nuclear place is near us. It's like a sort of it's like you've been on the moon. It's like a really different environment, and that's what it was a bit like when we were over there. So yeah, it was really lovely to see my cousin, and apart from the weather, it was really good. But what struck me, and part of the reason for telling you this story, is that these rallies, so this is a camping and caravanning club, so the people who are on these rallies, they're basically mostly retired, and they have either a caravan or mostly they have motorhomes, and quite often they've rented their house out in the UK, or they do have a house but they don't sort of spend lots of time in it because they're off in their camper van. And some of them literally go from rally to rally. So I don't know how many rallies there are in Spain over the winter, probably a dozen. And some people have spent, 6 weeks on one and 4 weeks on another, and they just sort of move around the country to get away from, the weather in England, which didn't work so well this week, did it? But it just did strike me when we talk about that whole concept of living more. I talk about how we need to get really clear about what we want our life to look like. So what we want to do more of and what we want to do less of. And then we need to align what we do with that. So, work towards increasing more of the stuff we want to do and decreasing the stuff that we don't want to do. And it just struck me that, the camping life is not for everyone. I mean, I love camping. I've talked about it a lot on the podcast, as you know. I go camping in the UK at rallies in fields in the middle of nowhere, quite often. So it's not for everyone. I'm not saying that's what everyone should be doing. But for these people that I met while I was away, they have got really clear about what they want to do. And some of them have been going to this campsite for years, 15, 20 years. They go every winter. They, escape the weather in the UK, and they take their caravan or motorhome. They've got their friends there. They, get together and have entertainment and stuff going on. And they've, they know the local area and everything else. And they just have a really lovely, relaxed life doing what they want to do. And as I say, it's not for everyone. I'm not suggesting that you think about getting a camper van or a caravan or anything else. But, it's just to me the epitome of being really clear about what you want to do with your life and what you enjoy, and making it happen. One of the couples I met there this week, they
I think they have a house, but they rent it out. But in the summer, they live in a static caravan in Anglesey. And they're just about to have it replaced with a lodge, which apparently is sort of residential quality. So the static caravans are a bit more caravan-y. I don't think that's a word. But they're having this lodge, which is apparently, sort of much more akin to an actual house. And, they spend their winters in Spain in their motorhome and their summers in basically a holiday sort of spot on a beautiful island overlooking the sea during the summer. And they do have a house, but they choose not to live in it and they rent it out. And that's, something that they've curated, a life they've curated for themselves, curated or created, whichever, that, is just lovely for them and suits them absolutely down to the ground. And yeah, so I just wanted to reflect on that. And, some of my travelling and some of the things that I do in my life, I was singing tonight in a choir that I sing with occasionally. I haven't sung with them for a little while, and I made the effort to go there tonight because I can't go to all the rehearsals because I'm away a lot and all this sort of stuff. And I just had a really lovely evening. It was really lovely music and it was quite a relaxed atmosphere and I just really enjoyed it. And I thought, oh yeah, I need to keep doing this, make sure that I come back again next year and keep doing this because it's something that I really want to do. And, I think we need to all be doing that. We need to all be thinking about the things that we want to do, the things we want to do more of, and working out how we can do that and how we can sort of minimise the things that we don't want to do. And, it's always a work in progress. We don't always get it right. And, I've got, I think, no evenings available for the next week because I'm singing in various concerts and doing other sort of musical things. But, it's a busy time the next couple of weeks and then it'll go a bit quieter. And so hopefully I won't put myself off. But, what are you doing to think about and determine what you want to do more of and how you're going about then planning and taking action to get you to that? So I'll leave that one with you to ponder. Just remind you about my membership site, Power to Live More Calm. If you want help as a home-based coach or consultant to build a successful business whilst getting to live more, so that is doing more of the things that you want to do and less of the things that you don't want to do, then come and talk to me. Get in touch, joe@powertolivemore.com, and we can have a conversation about how I can help you to do that. If you'd like to find out more about the membership site, then just go to powertolivemore.com/getcalm. And again, the show notes for this show are at powertolivemore.com/142. And we look forward to speaking to you next week.
Use your power to live more.